Ladies and gentlemen, honored delegates, friends and colleagues, my name is Mikal Bøe. I serve as the chair of the Maritime Applications and Nuclear Propulsion's working group at the World Nuclear Transport Institute, and for my day job, chairman and CEO of Core Power, based here in London. And today is a sense of occasion for me because it's the third time that I address you, dear delegates of the IMO, on the topic of new nuclear in maritime. And I also see that we now stand, I think, at the brink of a new era. And that is one that must see us both meaningfully reduce and eliminate greenhouse gas emissions from shipping and improve our energy efficiency. If we do not, we will end up polluting more, not less, and that is not the right outcome. Now, these two challenges present an almost unsurmountable issue of scale, but they also present us as an industry with an opportunity of a lifetime. That's the opportunity to demonstrate worldwide how the ingenuity of this ocean transportation sector, built over millennia in the face of adversity, against all odds, that we can show the world how this is done. We have many options available to us, but we only have one option that comes with true zero emissions and only one that meaningfully improves our energy efficiency. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is of course nuclear energy. One of the IMO's most important and enduring principles is no favorable treatment. All ships, regardless of flag, should be bound by the same high standards, ensuring a level playing field for all. That same principle must apply when we assess how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, evaluating each alternative fuel and technology without prejudice and without favor. A level playing field must exist when we compare the relative merits of bunker fuel, natural gas, ammonia, nuclear, methanol, carbon capture, batteries, wind, and the rest. Then we will see why shipping needs nuclear power to realize net zero, which is the title of my talk here today. Nuclear has immense energy content. In fact, up to 4 million times more than what we find in ammonia and methanol, the other alternatives, and an incredible safety track record at sea, and produces only tiny amounts of waste, which is in fact the only waste from energy that we manage properly. Nuclear is the only true zero emission energy which can power a ship for a whole lifetime of up to 30 years or longer, and it is also the only clean energy source that can reliably power the production of low carbon fuels like ammonia or methanol for smaller ships. Floating nuclear power stations in near-shore waters and nuclear-powered ships built in shipyards where the workforce is stable, it's fully trained, and allows for true modularity of construction can give us reliable costs and timely deliveries. We know that floating nuclear works because nuclear power has been used in nuclear navies for over 70 years, since the 1950s. And nuclear navies have proven that reactors can be operated safely at sea, tolerating pitching, rolling, heaving with the oceans, and traveling millions of miles without refueling, with zero emissions. But these naval reactors cannot be insured commercially. And that means we cannot bring them into ports or near-shore environments. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a showstopper. And it's where we have been stuck for decades. We therefore need new nuclear solutions, and we need relevant standards for those new solutions so they can be prototyped, demonstrated, and adopted to solve the immensely difficult dual challenge of both meeting our global climate goals and improving our energy efficiency. Here at the IMO, that starts with SOLAS Chapter 8, the Code of Safety for Nuclear Merchant Ships, known as Resolution A49112, or the Code, as we more conveniently call it, which you all passed and adopted back in 1981, 43 long years ago, and which is now long overdue, a major revision to bring it into the modern age. Now, when I spoke to you at MSC 106 in 2022, and then again at MEPC 80 last summer, I promised that I would deliver the results of a significant piece of work that has been 2 years in the making. I promised you that the World Nuclear Transport Institute, WNTI, together with the world's foremost experts in nuclear and maritime safety, would present you with a full technical gap analysis of the Code of Safety for Nuclear Ships. And I hold here in my hand that completed gap analysis. It is a big document, and it's available to all of you. Our experts have painstakingly gone through every aspect, line by line, issue by issue, as it was set out in the 1970s, and linking each of those to current globally accepted standards for both maritime and nuclear safety that apply today. We have submitted the analysis to the committee through MSC 108 INF.21, where we demonstrate how the code can be revised so that it can be goal-based, technology agnostic, and in a form that is suitable for all organizations involved in both design, the safety assessment process, including plant designers, plant licensees, plant operators, and independent verifiers. And we believe this important gap analysis is the key for you to recommend the approval to commence the important work of revising the code either here and now at MSC 108 or later this year at MSC 109. And as you embark on that journey, you will not be alone. You will be one of 3 crucial main parts of the ecosystem of standards that will govern nuclear power at sea. The second part is nuclear safety, security, and safeguards, whose guardian is the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, based in Vienna. And last week, the Director General of the IAEA, Mr. Rafael Grossi, called publicly for a roadmap for nuclear energy to become a viable option to reduce commercial shipping's global greenhouse gas emissions. He said, and I quote, "As the world increasingly turns to nuclear for sustainable development, we expect to see further advancements, including in the maritime sector, to decarbonize shipping, which is a key objective of the International Maritime Organization." Now, as a result, members of the IAEA Secretariat have attended meetings here at MSC 108 to observe and discuss how their current work on floating nuclear can be coordinated with work that should now commence here at the IMO. We're also making our gap analysis of the code available to the IAEA and your colleagues who represent you there. Now, that agency is now performing their own gap analysis, looking at their side of the standards and regulations which cover nuclear safety and nuclear security, and how those will apply to floating nuclear power. And what they will find is that the link between these 2 parts of the ecosystem of standards which apply to floating nuclear and nuclear-powered ships, you here at the IMO, they there at the IAEA, is this code of safety for nuclear ships. And I believe it's a question of when and not if, these 2 key parts of the regulatory ecosystem are joined together to form the foundation for a new era of ocean transportation that shows the world how we can both eliminate greenhouse gas emissions and improve our energy efficiency. We can demonstrate that, in fact, it can be done. We've ignored this issue for 43 years, and we can't ignore it any longer. The third part of the ecosystem of standards which must apply to floating nuclear and nuclear-powered ships is liability insurance. Without commercial liability insurance, nuclear-powered ships cannot enter ports and will be stuck where we are today with no nuclear solution to solve these 2 big challenges. And that, in my opinion, would be a real missed opportunity. For insurers to underwrite and reinsure commercial floating nuclear power, an international agreed convention of liabilities must be adopted. Today, both the existing nuclear liability conventions, known as the Vienna and the Paris Conventions, exclude nuclear-powered ships. And this is because the technology for which the IMO code was written and the non-insurability of that technology in a commercial merchant ship prevents nuclear liability insurance of mobile reactors. And here is why. Despite the outstanding safety records of the nuclear industry, and that there has never been a major nuclear incident involving large-scale damage outside the installation site, existing tort law does not adequately protect the public against nuclear risks on a national basis where the source of the risk is mobile, as it would be on a nuclear-powered ship. We therefore need a modern liability convention based on a new and improved narrative that allows such commercial insurability. On the 25th of May 1962, that's 62 years ago this week, the Brussels Convention on the Liability of Operators of Nuclear Ships was about to be signed after a very large majority of the more than 50 participants of that year's diplomatic conference on maritime law, including the United Kingdom, France, Japan, and most Western European countries, found that the United States, the Soviets, as they were known then, and the Eastern European countries under the Warsaw Pact refused to sign, and the convention was never ratified. And since the United States had been one of the earliest sponsors of a convention in this field, and since nuclear ships at the time were being operated solely under American and Soviet flags, the results were disappointing. But today, our situation is different. Today, it comes down to established practices and the conditions for how floating nuclear and nuclear ships can be commercially insured. For remedial legislation to be fully effective, where the reactor, the insured source of risk, is mobile, as it is with a nuclear ship, new nuclear technologies which can resolve the challenge of insurability must satisfy two main criteria. Now, I've shown you this illustration before, some of you might remember, but it is worth repeating. First, the emergency planning zone, that legally required zone around a reactor, must be minimal, preferably contained entirely within the confines of the ship's hull. And as you can see in this illustration, the emergency planning zone does not extend beyond the boundaries of the hull, minimizing the hazardous zone in the event of an accident. With no large-scale damage possible outside the installation site, which in our case would be the hull of the ship, tort law can apply, and therefore adequately protect the public against nuclear accident risks. This is a major departure from the way things are today. And this will facilitate the development of commercial insurance and open the door for waterways navigation and port calls for nuclear-powered ships. Now, second of those two key criteria is that new nuclear power systems must be passively safe under all conditions, as opposed to actively safe, which they are today, and meet or exceed the highest standards set for security and safeguards by design. New nuclear technologies which meet these two criteria will open the possibility of nuclear propulsion of large ocean-going ships, and the fourth IMO greenhouse gas study here at the IMO in 2020 identifies over 12,500 ships, containers, tankers, bulk carriers, cruise vessels, reefers, etc., where the case could be made for nuclear propulsion. And our estimate is that such a fleet would reduce the greenhouse gas emission from shipping by up to 70%. And with relevant standards in place, can be built in the coming decades to 2060. With new nuclear technologies that are commercially insurable, a revised and modern liability convention can be adopted for the first time and open the possibility for these amazing results to be achieved. Ship owners, shipyards, trading houses, banks, which control almost 5,000 large ships, have to date made financial investments in companies building these new nuclear technologies, and the industry now has nuclear-powered ships on the radar for commercial launch in the 2030s. Modular construction and shipyard production is a key strategy for scaling nuclear deployment. Both nuclear-powered ships and floating nuclear power plants, we call them FNPPs, can be centrally manufactured using common parts and components, which will allow the complete predictability of both cost and delivery times, which, as I'm sure you'll appreciate, is an unusual feature in the nuclear industry. Mr. Grossi of the IAEA said last week that we need a roadmap for the entire ecosystem to underpin these wonderful new solutions to shipping's greenhouse gas emissions and energy efficiency challenges. And we believe, at a high level, that such a roadmap can look like this. The first step is that you, the delegates of the IMO, commence the revision of the code and, in dialogue with the IAEA, complete that work over the next few years. Most of the work has already been done. Step 2, the IAEA completes its gap analysis of all current standards for nuclear safety and nuclear security and identifies the gaps and then coordinates the filling of those gaps with you here at the IMO. And that result would be a closely knit, internationally accepted set of standards for floating nuclear and nuclear-powered ships that meet or exceed the highest standards for safety and security, that are goal-based, technology-agnostic, and fit for purpose in commercial insurability. And then the third step is that the insurance industry, the hull and machinery insurers, the P&I clubs, nuclear risk insurers, and the reinsurance industry can use that internationally accepted set of standards as a foundation for a fresh liability convention that sets out how remedial legislation is fully effective when the insured risk is mobile. The fourth step is when nation states, members of the IMO and the IAEA, which are both a competent maritime and nuclear regulator, set down their domestic rules for how floating nuclear and nuclear-powered ships can transit their waters, enter and operate in their waterways, and make port calls. Some nations will also want to set rules and guidelines for the design and construction of these assets and will want to have these assets flagged domestically. And we expect to see these new nuclear technologies fully commercialized in the early 2030s. That's between 6 and 10 years from now. It's therefore imperative that we take this first step now by revising the Code of Safety for Nuclear Merchant Ships. And we will be seeking your support to co-sponsor a proposal to get this important work started. Now, the World Nuclear Transport Institute has for many years been a lone voice of nuclear transport here at the IMO. Our organization records over 20 million shipments of nuclear material every year, with a near 100% safety track record for the last 50 years. Nothing is safer than nuclear transport. But our work is never done, and we always strive for progress. So WNTI will continue to be laser-focused on the safe shipments of nuclear material, nuclear fuel, and medical radioisotopes so that lives can be saved, but we must add voices to this choir. And this year, 10 leading companies developing new technology solutions, class rules, insurance, and manufacturing facilities for floating nuclear and nuclear-powered ships got together and formed an international trade body called the Nuclear Energy Maritime Organization, NEMO, and a further 30 members from around the world are now queuing to join this summer. And NEMO will, together with WNTI, spearhead the essential work to assist you here at the IMO and your colleagues at the IAEA with the modernization of the entire regulatory ecosystem for nuclear-powered ships and FMPPs. NEMO expects to make its own application to become an observer NGO here at the IMO to assist you in this important work, and we will seek your support again for this application. Our common aim between the two is to have a fit-for-purpose ecosystem of rules and regulations established by 2030. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I know that it's been a long day for you. I wish to thank you again for your attention. I encourage you to reach out to us to engage, learn, participate, and influence the developments for a positive outcome. And I would, of course, be happy to answer your questions, and we look forward to seeing you at our drinks reception upstairs after this session. Thank you.